Hi there, and welcome to yet another edition of the YDG podcast. My name is Selasi Ahadzi, an alum and also privileged to be the host for today. We're going to be discussing a very interesting topic, and before I tell you what it is, I want to introduce my wonderful panelist and let you know what we're going to be doing today. So, if you're ready, I think I'll start on my right.
Okay, my name is Hariratah Ibrahim Doudu. I'm a law student and the vice president for the Ghana School of Law SRC Gimpa campus.
Hi everyone, my name is Enoch Appiagyei. I'm a YDG delegate and I'm also the founder of the Appiagyei Impact Foundation. I'm very much excited to be in the midst of these wonderful, vibrant Africans. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nana Efua Amissah Baidoo, and just simply put, I'm a YDG delegate.
Oh, thank you also so much, and I'm really glad to have you.
Right.
So today's conversation is on Pan-Africanism. Is it nostalgia or is it still a necessity? And for us to be able to really delve into this, it will be important for us to really consider the essence of Pan-Africanism, as it were. Understand the roots, trace it right through the institutions that we have today, and see whether it's really living up to its mettle in terms of international politics and the world at large today. So my very first question to you is going to be, just for context, when you hear Pan-Africanism, what is it? What does it mean to you? What does it really hold true to you? I think I'll start with you, Harira.
Okay, thank you. So Pan-Africanism to me is not just a historical concept, but to me it is the idea that Africans, our unity depends on self-determination and a collective action, that it has to be practical instead of it just being a concept that we hear each and every day. It is something that we have to practice in our daily lives as an individual, as a corporation, institution. It is a collective responsibility that each and every one of us need to, look at and establish. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much. Kojo, what are your thoughts?
All right. So basically, Pan-Africanism, it's an ideology. It's the idea that Africans of all people from the African descent, whether those living on the continent or those in the diaspora, we share a common interest and a common history. And even beyond sharing this common history, it's also a call for an active participation in the pushback against colonization, exploitation, racism, and the likes. The early thinkers of Pan-Africanism were of the view that for us to be able to be successful in the pushback against colonization, we needed to have a united front of Africa. We needed to have unity, a unified Africa. And that's why when Dr. Kwame Nkrumah came into the scene, there was the need to there was a fight for the United States of Africa, the usage of a common currency, and a whole lot. And then later on, it led to the formation of the OAU, which is now the African Union. And so basically, all what they were doing was to get a unified Africa. And if you would want to get into a bit of the origin, this whole conversation about Pan-Africanism, it didn't begin on the African soil. I believe it began in the diaspora, in the US in the 19th century, early 19th century, the likes of Martin Delany, the likes of Alexander Crummell and others. But even going beyond from them, there was this American African author and writer, W.E.B. Du Bois. He is known to be the real or the true father of modern day Pan-Africanism. And he did something very, very instrumental. He basically organized series between 1919 to 1945. He organized series of Pan-African conferences in Paris, in London, Manchester, and the likes. And what he was basically doing was to bring together African leaders or black leaders, and then imbibed that concept in them that we needed to push back against colonization. Then Marcus Garvey also came in, the Jamaican activist. He also came in, transformed Pan-Africanism from intellectual concepts into the masses, and then he did a mass mobilization. Then later on, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, and that was when Pan-Africanism got onto the African soil. So with that, I'll leave it to my colleagues to touch on. But in summary, what I want to say is that Pan-Africanism, yes, there was unity part of it, but it wasn't just about unifying Africa. It was for us to be able to redefine our history, and our interests as Africans.
That's an interesting perspective, and I think I'll hear from you, Nana Efua, before I ask my next
He's
question.
basically said so much, but I believe that Pan-Africanism is sourced from the idea that we as Africans are one people, and we share common interests, we share common historical ties, and so there's a need for us to come together, to work together harmoniously, to be able to push towards the emancipation of our freedom, to work against neocolonialism as we see it now, and then basically just come together, see ourselves as individual Africans, not as nations separately, come together, work together for the emancipation of the Pan-African idea.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. So what I'm really getting is the fact that beyond just being an ideology, it's also a form of identity, which from everything you've shared so far transcends our nationalities, or transcends, who we think we are in terms of, oh, I'm Ghanaian, I'm this. But what I'm hearing is that the ideals of Pan-Africanism is saying that we are all one people. We have a shared history.
Exactly.
But beyond that, we also have a shared future, and that we all have a part to play in that. Thank you so much for that context. So then, that being said, what are some of the institutions that have been built through this ideology and through these ideals? Because, today we hear of agencies like ECOWAS, the AU, which you've mentioned. So these institutions, how truly have they supported the fight in Pan-Africanism, and what do they really stand for today? I think I'll start from you, Nana Efua, because we had the last word to talk to me.
Okay, that's fine. We have the AU, we have ECOWAS, we have the Eastern community as well. But there are others as well. But then I would want to speak about the African Continental Free Trade Area, because it's also an institution. The AFTA, as we call it as well, is basically to ensure that there's free movement of people, goods and services across the African continent. Actually, that's the structure that it should be following. But let's be quite realistic here. It's really not how it is going now. We have so many tariffs. We have so many restrictions when we are moving goods and services. There are so many business men and women that have so much difficulty trying to do their transactions across the African continent. The African Continental Free Trade Area is supposed to have a 0% tariff law that would help us to be able to move across freely, where we have one currency, where we'll be able to move freely, basically. That's what I'll say about the African Continental Free Trade Area.
So just before I come to you, Coach, so what I'm hearing is that essentially, the ideals that Nkrumah had, where number one, there's one African parliament, so to speak, where there's representation across, there's one currency, freedom, and I'm sure you probably touch on that when you speak. So tell me more about what you think the institutions have.
Okay, so I would want to touch on the AU, obviously, because of how critical their role is on the continent. So you'd ask yourself, was the AU actually developed to achieve its purpose? I would say yes.
What was its purpose, though? Tell us that before you defend that.
According to the Constitutive Act of the African Union, which came in to replace the OAU Charter, yes, that was in 2000. I think, yes, it was adopted in 2000 in Togo. And what this Constitutive Act says is that AU was established for three things: collective security, protection of their people in terms of crisis, and prevention of some of these conflicts. It was also for, like you spoke about after, it was to get an integrated economy such that we can move goods freely and then what have you. And then it was also for us to get coordinated politically. Talking about conflicts and the prevention of these wars that arises. I mean, in 2017, heads of states of African countries were gathered in Addis Ababa. And while this summit was going on, people or thousands of Africans from the Anglophone part of Cameroon, they were on the streets of Cameroon. And what they were calling for is equality. Now, you ask yourself, what did their leaders did and AU actually did? What the leaders did was actually mass shooting, mass arrest, internet blackout for like several months. AU came in and the only thing they could do was release statements without any constructive effort to solve these crises. And so you'd ask yourself, on paper, they are meant to protect their people. But for me, I'm saying that considering the current circumstances, it looks like they are losing relevance.
Wow.
And if indeed the AU can really get back its relevance and achieve the unity that we are all talking about, they are supposed to tackle their core limitations.
Interesting, tackling core limitations. So, Hariratah, do you think any other, institutions that have this Pan-Africanist ideals are also doing something to tackle that?
So amazing contributions from my colleagues here, but I would like to touch a bit on ECOWAS, which is the Economic Community of West African States, basically allowing us to collaborate with each other as Africans, free movements of goods, services.
Within the bloc?
Yes.
Okay.
So instead of it's just being, okay, as a Ghanaian, you have to operate within Ghana. ECOWAS is allowing us to tap into each other's resources, even though it's still work in progress, but we can see that from time to time, it has become something that we cannot ignore. They are doing very well, but still more room for improvement. I could also talk about the peacekeeping missions. When we look at the issue in Sierra Leone and all of that, that when there is an issue in other African countries, each and every country who is willing to support can send their troops there to, help them conquer the issue. So
that leads me to a fundamental question, really. Even within the countries, right? The reason why we respect the laws in the countries because we've ceded a part of our sovereignty. We say that, okay, governments, we are giving you, control over certain rights and freedom so that you keep all of us safe. So if it happens that Ghana, for instance, the government's not able to protect certain people within the country, do you think everyone should still subscribe to the leadership or the authority of Ghana? Based on your thinking around that, let me relate it now to the AU. Do you think, like you said, with the issue of the conflict, where all they've been able to do is more or less make statements, do you think this really shows a strengthened front when it comes to the whole ideal of Pan-Africanism?
To a larger extent, I would say yes. Basically, they are unable to act, most importantly, because of funding.
Funding.
It's a very core issue. It is known that about more than 50% of the AU's funding annually comes from foreign donors, the EU, US, China. And what this means is that the very institution that we established to make Africa independent is in itself not independent. Do you understand? And it's very worrying. And so if indeed we can really appreciate the works of the AU, the other institutions, and then achieve Pan-Africanism in its proper context, some of these gaps needs to be addressed. And then,
so if you're talking about funding, right now we're in the world of technology, right?
Yeah.
So give me your thoughts on, the digital aspect of that Pan-Africanism, because from what you're saying, it means that we really need to be able to mobilize funding through other sources and other means. How do you think, Afrofusion as a concept has come to play when it comes to driving Pan-Africanism? Maybe I'll start with you since you were on that, and then I'll come to you, Nana Efua.
Okay, so digital Pan-Africanism. I would want to talk on PAPS, Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. This is a very key example, or practical example of how we've moved Pan-Africanism from the rooms and from podcast studios to the grounds. Gone are the days where Pan-Africanism was just a concept or an idea. But today, young people are using technology to build connections, build relations. And this is not true treatise as it was back then. But now they are using the power of technology. So PAPS came in as a very solid a solid pillar of AFCFTA, because you can never have a single localized market when you do not have a single localized payment system. Previously, if you would have to make payment as a businessman to someone in, say, Nigeria, you would have to go through foreign platforms and what have you, use foreign currencies, very costly, time consuming. But PAPS is in to actually remove or do away with all these limitations, making you make payment and receive payment in real time. And I believe that is a very, very important aspect of digital Pan-Africanism.
Thank you so much, Kojo. Nana Efua, what do you think?
As Kojo said, young people of nowadays are able to connect with other Africans through social media. They are able to market for entrepreneurs, they are able to market their goods, their services to other Africans, even in the African diaspora. When they find themselves in the African continent, they're able to connect with these fellow Africans, pitch their ideas to them, able to share their common interests and all of that. So I believe that digital Pan-Africanism it's a very, very important subject that is running in our current day now.
Interesting. Harira, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, so I would believe that in this generation or this age and day, digital Pan-Africanism is something that has become of importance that we cannot ignore, because young people now converse or engage with each other through their digital platforms. And I think it's an opportunity for the Africans in the diaspora to connect to their roots. It gives them the opportunity to learn about their culture. I'm sure some of them would probably be learning about history that our people over there have skewed to fit their ideologies. So through social media, they get to touch back home, touch on base. And then I think that most times whenever there are issues for raising funds and all of that, some of them are very interested in doing that. And it's quite easy because now there are systems where sending money back home is, easy to do. And sending those monies back home help the African economy to grow one way or the other. So I think digital Pan-Africanism is something that this generation is pushing consciously, subconsciously, each and every day. Whatever we do is a way, through music, content creation. Now you see Ghanaians going to Nigeria to create content with them, even the movie industry. Now you see more Ghanaians in Nigerian movies than here. So I think this thing is something of importance, and I'm happy that it's happening.
And also one thing, say if I'm going to mention a name and tell me what immediately comes to mind. Dance God.
Dance. Ghana.
Yes.
Dance.
And would you say that he has contributed to the perception that, the world has about Afrobeats today, for instance? And do you think that in leveraging, a platform like dance and the social media platforms that exist, they're able to really communicate more of our culture, more of, our essence, our values through all of these things? Do you think that's a collective, position we all hold?
I think so because when these Dance God, when he does his moves and all of that, and people kind of ask, where is this from? How did this come about? One way or the other, you find yourself speaking about always it's from this particular culture. This is what they do. That's why we are doing this kind of movements and all of that. One way or the other, you are sharing your values, your culture with the other person that you are sharing the information to, basically. So one way or the other, consciously or subconsciously, what he's doing is propagating what the Ghanaian culture to the African.
There is another, he's called, I think, Kojo Buji, and he does these shows where he's always giving some kind of historical information about something. He could take a dance, he takes a clip, and then, you watch it for a while. I'm sure you've all come across it. And I find all of these, avenues as really unique ways where we can tell our stories. Because everything I've gathered so far from our conversation is that, number one, we are looking at a system which is similar to maybe the EU, for instance. Because with the European Union, you understand that there's free movement of people. They're using the same currency. And I'll probably make reference to the YDG study tours, which I think is going to be a beautiful opportunity for you once you experience, where you get the chance to, go to these places and you will move freely from country to country. You're using the same currency. That means that automatically the opportunities that are available to you are much broader than your home country. And that's what we're trying to talk about. So that links to the issue of diasporans and whether they are truly considered a part of the Pan-African conversation. And I know we had some discourse before, and there was some back and forth on that. So I'm really happy to delve into this particular one. I'll start with you, Nana Efua. Do you think that diasporans have a claim when it comes to Pan-Africanism? Or do you think the continent has, or the people on the continent have more of, critical role in that? Share your thoughts with me.
So the African diaspora is a sixth region when it comes to the AU. And we all know, as Kojo said earlier, that Pan-Africanism basically started from the African diaspora. I agree with you on that, definitely. But I would want to say that honestly, the African diaspora do not have a serious representation, even in the AU. They don't have a body that that is governed by a particular head, where they have a representation in the AU, where they can share their ideas with the various leaders of the AU, where they can share their concerns, their ideologies, and all of that. So there isn't really a serious representation of the African diaspora in the African continent, let's be honest. But with regards to who is claiming what, I think that Africans basically are claiming it more because we are here, we have access to a lot of things more than they do. It seems a bit far-fetched for them, one way or the other, even though that's where Pan-Africanism came from. It's a bit far-fetched for them. That's my take on it.
Kojo, what are your thoughts?
She agrees to the fact that Pan-Africanism began from the diaspora. Yes, that is a known fact. I mean, historical antecedents certifies that. So if it began from there and they imbibed the idea, they even gave Africans that zeal that they can push back against colonization, then on any day, I mean, I can stand anywhere and say that they have the authority to claim it. And it's based on that in 2003, they were recognized by the AU as the sixth African region.
Kojo, not to catch you, but in practice, are they experiencing that?
I believe so. I believe so to a larger extent because, look, let's talk about the impact of this sixth African region. Through remittances, according to the IMF, about $70 billion is the inflows that comes into Africa annually. Do you understand? Yeah. And this is true remittances only from our migrants only. You know, the diaspora, you have two types. You have migrant and the historical diaspora. This is from migrants only. Yes, I understand that the representation is a challenge. Yes, they have no power to vote. Currently, they only engage them on policies through ECOSOC, Economic, Social and Cultural Council. That is the only means. And it's a limitation, I understand. But with their contributions, they being the set region is a strategy. And it was for them to be able to support the development of the other 5 regions. Do you understand? And so when it comes to their impact, I believe that practically they are making solid impact. $70 billion annually is not a joke. It's very, very significant. We can compare it to a lot of the African countries, their budgets annually. And it's way higher than that. So for me, I believe that, yes, they are very...
Hariratah, do you have any thoughts on this particular one?
Yes, so I think I would agree with the fact that the diasporas have the right to claim Pan-Africanism because when we look at W.E.B. Du Bois, who was an African-American, basically came up with this idea, if I should say. We in Africa ourselves are too nationalist. We are too dependent on ourselves. So instead of maybe trying to depend on each other, we depend on foreign countries like those in the AU, China, all of that for our imports, food, basic necessities that we could have gotten from African countries. We basically go out for it. But when you look at the diasporas, every attempt of theirs to touch back base is basically to help the African continent. They don't do, okay, I'm Ghanaian and okay, that is it. Because an average Ghanaian basically just believes that, okay, I'm a Ghanaian. It doesn't matter what is going on in Togo, what is going on in, they don't really care. But diasporans are meeting, they're having conferences, trying to think about the future of Africa, where they come back home, organize programs, try to help Ghanaians, Togo, every African with scholarships. They do a lot for the African continent. So I think they have a right to claim.
I hear you, and it brings me to an interesting point, right? So if we're saying that the diaspora has so much to offer when it comes to the development of the continent, but at the same time, they don't have the necessary representation and ownership that would make them feel as a part of it, do you think it is then going to be a sustainable way to promote development across? Because I know that if you tell me, oh, I belong to your family, you're very happy to take my money, you're very happy to take the opportunities I can, provide. But then when I come home, you make me feel different, or I don't have a room in the house. Can I truly say that, or can I truly feel like I belong to you?
I believe that's a gap that needs to be filled, basically. As you said, I can't feel welcome if I don't have a room in the house when I come back home.
Okay.
So this is something that we as young Africans should actually look at and actually come together, have such conversations, and let it not just end at the conversations, but actually create movements that can actually ensure that the African diasporas have a representation in our little small ways. You understand?
I get you. But then that also brings to mind the question, she ended on the point that we are largely nationalistic in view. Pan-Africanism, nationalism, are they two competing ideologies? Or does one actually serve as a foundation and a furtherance for the other? What do you think about that? Could you let me come to you?
Okay, so Pan-Africanism, nationalism, can they coexist? To a large extent, if you ask me, I'll say yes, they can coexist. But then there's a price to pay.
There's a price to pay.
There's a price to pay. I mean, there's a political price to pay. We all understand that all African leaders, you are accountable to your people back home. And so if someone comes up with an idea, Pan-Africanism, it should be framed in a way that it advances the interest of our people back home. If it is coming in to replace their interest, then definitely our leaders are definitely going to push back to it. And so the difficulty is that our political system in the various African nations are made in a way that they are finding it very difficult to pay this political price. They all are scared of losing political power. And so once our leaders, because if you can achieve Pan-Africanism in its full scope, we need to give up some form of our sovereignty as the various African nations. Like Nana Efua rightly mentioned,
that's a great point.
A lot of people are fighting. I'm a Ghanaian. I'm a Nigerian whose jollof sounds better. Is it Nigerian jollof or Ghanaian jollof? Why don't you call it African jollof in different recipes? Do you understand?
That's a very interesting way. It reminds me of what my ambassador told me one time. That was the former High Commissioner of Rwanda. She made a statement when I asked her, oh, so where's she from? She told me she's African. She's an African who comes from a part of the continent called Rwanda. And it was such a profound thing to hear because it exposed the mentality and perspective that she had. She saw herself first as African.
Okay.
And I think that is going to be an interesting approach to take. If we can start to see ourselves as Africans first, who just come from different parts of the continent, that makes it easier to really see that at the end of the day, our shared values, all of those things really come from the same place. And it'll probably make it easier. But then, Nana Efua, talk to me about, he's already talked about the sovereignty trade-off that needs to happen. What about the borders that exist geographically, all of that? How do we navigate those? Because I feel like we can't do much if those are still in place.
These borders came about as a result of colonialism. We are Africa. We are all Africans. These borders are as a result of colonialism and has transcended into neo-colonialism that has made us think that we are different people, or because we are from different parts of Africa, meaning we have vast differences in our cultures, which is not true. Neo-colonialism makes us think that, okay, yes, we have our political independence, but actually what we do is largely directed by the diaspora, basically. When I say diaspora, I mean the Western world. We don't have a complete sovereignty when it comes to the decisions that we make. Let's be very honest with ourselves as African countries. So yes, these borders and restrictions are all as a result of colonialism.
So to add to what Nana Efua just mentioned, I think that when it comes to the topic of order and all of that, I think the political independence we gained would not be able to work if we don't have economic independence. So now we gain political independence. Everybody now has their sovereignty and all of that. Largely, we are dependent economically on the colonizers. We cannot basically function on our own. So if we decide to come together, now it means that we need to cut off that bit of it. So the two of them need to run together, economic independence and political independence, for us to be able to now come and say, okay, now these borders, what do we do about them? They use the borders to colonize us. And now that we know we are one, we can depend on each other economically, politically, we can collaborate and do all of that. Now, what do we do about the borders? Do we still maintain them and find a way to make, traveling to other countries easier?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, the visa, because a lot of countries now are opening up the borders. I know Rwanda's done that, so many other countries as well. Could you wanted to touch on something?
Yeah.
As you do that, also let me know what you think, especially as young Ghanaians, we should do when it comes to the call that Pan-Africanism, has for us. What's the demand really? If we've established all of these contexts, what do we need to do as young Ghanaians to contribute to that fight? So,
first, interestingly, you would have to know that the border issue, I would want to touch on that first. For the African unity to be a reality, all our leaders need to come together. But the interesting part is, some of our leaders, they know that if they function in silos, if they should function individually, they gain selfishly from so much that they do not want to come together actually to achieve the aim of Pan-Africanism. But that will be tackled on another day. So let me go on to speak to the young Ghanaian or young African that is watching me today. I mean, Pan-Africanism is no more a conceptual ideology. It is a set of choices that we make each and every day. It demands from us that we are intentional about what we consume and what we support. We should do so well to support African brands and African creative stock of the music, our foods, our fashion, and what have you. Let's do well to support them. And you should know that every purchase that you make is a vote on the kind of Africa that you want to see. And to talk about social media too, we have so much power on social media. Today, you go on X and conversations or narratives that are going on are very toxic to the young Ghanaian or young African. Let's use our power as ambassadors of SDGs. Let's use the power we have on social media to change the narrative. Let's begin certain discussions. Let's tell our stories in our own way. Now we have the power. You go on social media, you go on Facebook and it asks you what is happening today or what's on your mind or something. Let it be something that speaks on Pan-Africanism. And I believe that once you're able to make these intentional choices each and every day consistently, Pan-Africanism will no more be a dream that we have to chase, but as a reality that we actually live. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if I'll come to you, but Harry, I want to hear your thoughts on this before I come to Efua.
So when I saw the topic for discussion, Pan-Africanism as a necessity or nostalgia, I thought about it as a young Ghanaian myself. I think that Pan-Africanism, if treated as nostalgia, would be said to be a historical concept. But I don't believe that is the case. I believe that it is something that is amongst us. It is part of us. We cannot do without it. So as a young Ghanaian, as a young African, I think that instead of subconsciously contributing to it as we are, we should now intentionally do it. We should now intentionally patronize each other, intentionally collaborate with each other. And then when we get the opportunity to speak on matters that is in relation to Africa, we are supposed to, paint that picture, because now with social media, people outside Africa are also watching us and learning about it. So I think that as young Africans, most importantly, we are supposed to utilize the digital instruments that we have today. So, yeah.
Interesting. And Efua?
Yeah. So as she rightly said, in our own small ways, we have to try our best to ensure that we are propagating what Pan-Africanism is in its actual respect. There's a need for us to ensure that there's a reawakening of the ideology and the movement of Pan-Africanism. You know, Kwame Nkrumah put this institution in place. It's called the Ghana Young Pioneers Movement, where young people were trained on what it means to be patriots. And after he was overthrown, it was also closed down, basically. I believe there's something like that for the African youth. We sing this song, Arise Ghana Youth for a Country. We sang it as a marching song all the time, but we never really sat down to think about the lyrics of that marching song. So I think that if we have institutions that are set down to train young people to understand what it means to be an African, what it means to be a Ghanaian, then as young people, we can, in our own little way, contribute to that. We can ensure that these things, these little contributions will be put in place or will be put before our leaders, and then one way or the other, they can incorporate it in our system.
I have a question for all of you. What price are you willing to pay to see Pan-Africanism thrive today as a young Ghanaian? Because Nkrumah did mention that Ghana's independence is meaningless unless it's linked, to the total liberation. It's speaking about how all of these wonderful opportunities exist to do that. But it's also spoken about how interest, corruption, among so many other things, still stifle the fight. What price are you willing to pay? And do you think Ghanaians, Africans, young people across the continent are ready and willing to pay the price?
I think I'm willing to let go of nationalism. Basically, I believe that if we come together as one, instead of us focusing on the national interest of each country, which is quite selfish to me, because if you go to other continents like the EU and others, even though you can tell the division, it is not too much. They have one currency. Everything is just running as it should. So why can't we do it? Why are we still holding on to the ideology, the colonial, instincts that were put in us? Why can't we let that go? Come together. I traveled recently to Togo and I enjoy the place. So imagine I wake up every morning and I can just, walk in there. Yeah. So I am ready to let go of nationalism in order to explore and enjoy Africa as a whole instead of bits and pieces of it.
So what I'm hearing is that you're not necessarily even letting go of nationalism, but you are elevating to the point where you understand that Pan-Africanism is something that is beyond just, the national or the individual interest, where you can see that. Beautiful. Kojo, tell me what you think.
All right. So I've already mentioned, it's in two ways or two forms. It's about our leaders. It is about us. So our leaders have a price to pay. That political price to be paid. They may lose power even in their quest to get to achieve Pan-Africanism. So that is one side. And then we also have a price to pay. It is not really about what is nicer, but what will help us to achieve that bigger picture. So for me, I'm ready to give off everything that was, if I'm in suits, a foreign sewn suit, it's nicer. It brings your aura up. But then I'm ready to give that up to wear my print. Do you understand? So I'm ready on any day to give off or give away anything nicer that is not tied to Pan-Africanism, and then go back to my roots and then pick up whatever it's available around me that will suit my purpose. Yes.
Interesting. And if I talk to me.
So unfortunately on our markets, sometimes we find out that the Ghanaian products are quite more expensive than the Western products. And so as he was saying, he would give up his suit to wear an African theme, just like he's wearing now. Yeah. Definitely. It's something that you feel left, don't worry, you're fine. Something that I would also decide to give up. If I go into the supermarket and I see local rice and I see white rice, I should be able to say, okay, it's Ghanaian owned, so I want to get that. It may be more pricier. So this would be me giving more money out, my resources, spending more money just to purchase the Ghanaian made products. So I think in my own small way, these are the kind of little things that I can do as well.
Oh, thank you so much. So I just want to sum up our conversation today just before we wrap up. We've established that the ideals and the concept of Pan-Africanism is one that started beyond the continent. It started in the West, came here and was owned by the people. we've established that the many institutions that were set up for it, right from the AU, ECOWAS, and other regional blocs, have tried their best to make sure there's that cohesion. But there's still much more that needs to be done because there are certain gaps. Some of the ideals were that we see ourselves as one people, where we rally around the same, we have a parliament, for instance, that can have conversations that affect everyone. We have that unification when it comes to our economic, independence, where we can negotiate with the West as one people. We can set our own prices, have, an understanding of what it means to negotiate economically from that perspective. Common currency, we should make it easier such that we can do business across borders. Even the ideals of the AFCFTA, which seeks to set up the single largest market where we can do more business, more trade. These are wonderful, beautiful ideals that are necessary. And the fact that the SID region, which is the diaspora, has a part to play is one that is not lost on us. But it's really important that, having discussed these things, more effort needs to be done. We need to be able to have more conversations, but beyond that, also more practical examples of what that means. So are we able to have more conversations with people about doing business across countries? What does that mean for taxation systems? Are there treaties and systems in place to make sure that if a product is certified and approved in Ghana, it's also recognized in Nigeria or Rwanda or Tanzania, or does it need to go through another process? Some of these things would remove the barriers that are, keeping intra-African business from happening, number one. It would also promote the culture. It's a privilege to have Afrobeats, Afrofusion music, and all of these wonderful things that are bringing us together as a people. But it cannot end there. In your own small way, as a young people, take advantage of these opportunities. Use your TikTok, use your Instagram, your Facebook to talk about Pan-Africanism and what it means. Remind each other that we are one people and that at the end of the day, our collective good can be realized through the concepts and ideals of Pan-Africanism. Thank you all so much. I think we've had a very wonderful conversation. Thank you for making this practical. Thank you for making this also insightful by giving us some, really, really rich history. I look forward to having more conversations with you. And I look forward to seeing each and every one of us leading by example, where we do what we're talking about, what we've discussed today. Thank you all so much once again.
You're welcome. Thank you
for having us.
All right, awesome.